The twin suns of Zithra cast long golden shadows over the endless dunes. The desert stretched as far as the eye could see, broken only by jagged rocks and the occasional oasis shimmering with pale blue water. Wind whispered across the sands, carrying the faint scent of minerals in the heat of the day. In the heart of this harsh world, the alien clans lived and thrived, each teaching their young the arts of survival and combat. Among them was Lyra, a young alien girl with violet eyes that sparkled like rare gems in sunlight. Her skin had a subtle silver hue, reflecting the sun in a soft glow. She was small but fierce, her movements quick and precise. Lyra carried a curved, elegant sword strapped across her back, a weapon both beautiful and deadly. She trained every day from dawn to dusk, practicing swings, stances, and strikes, dreaming of the day she would enter the trials of valor, a sacred ceremony where only the strongest and bravest were honored. Lyra's clan, the Veari, were known for their strict discipline and dedication to combat. Elders often said, "Strength alone does not make a warrior. Courage and wisdom do." Lyra repeated this to herself every morning as she sparred with her training partners. Yet deep inside she felt something more, an impatience to prove herself, to show that even a young girl could rise above expectations. On one particularly hot morning, Lyra sprinted across the training grounds, her boots kicking up clouds of sand. She paused before a practice dummy, breathing heavily, and raised her sword high. Her arms ached, but her eyes burned with determination. Today she would master the spinning strike, a move she had failed to perfect many times before. "Focus," she whispered to herself. "Control your strength, control your mind." The sword cut through the air with a hiss as she spun, her feet sliding against the sand. She landed gracefully, but when she turned, she froze. A figure stood at the edge of the training grounds, watching her. He was human, tall, with dark hair and eyes that seemed calm and thoughtful. His uniform gleamed in the sunlight, simple yet refined. Lyra had seen humans only in passing, from the sky ships that sometimes hovered above Zithra. They were unpredictable, strong, and mysterious. And now one stood before her, observing silently. Lyra's heart pounded. "Who is this?" she muttered. "Why is he here?" The human stepped forward, but not aggressively. His hands were empty and he carried no weapons. There was no threat in his posture, only a relaxed confidence. Lyra gripped her sword tighter, her violet eyes narrowing. "You are Lyra of the Veari," he said, his voice calm, almost melodic. "I am Kale, I mean no harm." Lyra's instincts screamed to strike. She had been taught that humans were dangerous, that they could not be trusted. Yet something in Kale's presence was different. He did not radiate fear or arrogance. Instead, he seemed patient. "I'm not afraid," Lyra said, raising her sword. Her voice was steady, though her pulse raced. "Step back, human, or face me in combat." Kale's lips curved into a small, gentle smile. He did not move closer. "I came to observe, not to fight," he said. "But I will not step away from what is right." Lyra hesitated. She had never met anyone who could remain calm while a sword was pointed at them. The thought unsettled her. Usually, fear was easy to detect and anger made opponents predictable. Kale showed neither. "You speak boldly for a child," she said, her voice rising with frustration. "Do you know who you are standing before?" "I see a warrior," Kale replied softly. "Not a child. Not just strength, but skill and heart." Lyra's chest tightened. No one had ever spoken to her this way. Even the elders were formal, distant, and strict. She had always trained to impress them, to earn their respect. But this human, he seemed to understand something beyond her sword, beyond her movements. She took a cautious step forward, swinging her blade in a wide arc. Kale moved to the side, his movement smooth, almost effortless. He did not dodge in fear. He adjusted his stance and let her pass. Lyra stopped mid-swing, eyes wide. "What? How did you—" she began. Kyle tilted his head and smiled. "I move with understanding, not to avoid or attack. You strike because it is your way. I simply observe your way." Lyra lowered her sword slightly, confused. No one had ever spoken like this to her, let alone faced her without hostility. She felt a mixture of anger, awe, and curiosity. "Why are you here?" she demanded, her voice firmer. "Humans are not welcome on Zithra. My clan does not trust outsiders." "I am here to learn," Kale said simply, "and perhaps to teach. I do not wish to fight, but if challenged, I will respond." Lyra's grip on her sword relaxed, though she did not drop it. "You are very brave," she muttered, more to herself than to him. "Or very foolish." Kale chuckled softly, the sound light and calming in the harsh desert air. Perhaps both, he admitted. The wind picked up, swirling sand around their feet. Lyra looked around the training grounds. She imagined herself in the trials of valor, facing the strongest warriors of Zithera, and wondered how she would measure against Kale. Her thoughts raced. Could a human truly understand combat in a way that went beyond strength? Could he teach her something the elders could not? Before she could answer, a shout came from the edge of the dunes. One of her training partners, a young alien boy named Tarek, ran toward her, panic in his voice. Lyra, the elders have called a council. There is news. About the humans. Lyra's violet eyes narrowed. News? What kind of news? Tarek shook his head. They are unsure. They say humans might come to Zithera in greater numbers. They are discussing whether to prepare for war or an alliance. Lyra's heart skipped. War was a certainty when humans were involved, or so the elders had always said. Yet Kale stood there calm and unarmed, smiling. Her sword felt heavier in her hands as a new thought took root. Perhaps strength was not only measured by strikes and duels, but also by patience, understanding, and choice. Kale's gaze met hers. Do not let fear guide your hand, he said quietly. Strength is in knowing when to raise your sword and when to lower it. Lyra stared at him, trying to understand. She had trained all her life to fight, to prove herself, to earn honor, and now this human seemed to be teaching her a lesson no sword could deliver. The sun dipped lower, painting the dunes in shades of orange and red. Lyra felt a strange calm settle over her. She kept her sword raised, but no longer as a weapon of anger or fear. Instead, it became a symbol of choice, of courage tempered with wisdom. As the council approached, Lyra looked at Kale one last time. His smile remained simple and kind, and she realized that her fate might be changing in ways she could never have imagined. The duel of swords she had imagined with the humans might not be the only battle ahead. Perhaps the true challenge would be learning trust, understanding, and the power of restraint. Lyra turned to follow Tarek, ready to face the elders, ready to listen, and ready to learn. The wind swept across the dunes, carrying with it the scent of distant storms, of trials yet to come, and of a future that promised both danger and hope. And above all, Lyra understood one simple truth. Sometimes a smile could change a fate more than the sharpest blade ever could. The sun rose slowly over Zithera, casting a warm glow over the training grounds where Lyra had spent most of her childhood. The desert air was filled with the sounds of warriors practicing their strikes, the clang of metal on metal and the steady rhythm of footsteps on sand. Today, however, a different kind of tension hung in the air, one not created by the sun or the wind, but by the presence of a human named Kale. Lyra had thought about him all night. His calm eyes, his gentle smile, the way he moved without aggression, it all haunted her mind. She could not understand how someone so seemingly fragile could inspire a feeling of respect and curiosity at the same time, and yet she felt it. The elders had gathered for a council early in the morning. Lyra stood among her clan, her violet eyes fixed on the humans who had come with Kale. The air was thick with suspicion. The elders spoke in low, serious tones about the humans' history, their unpredictability, and the possibility of danger. Many whispered about war. But Kale remained outside the council tent, waiting. He did not show anger, fear, or impatience. He simply waited, standing tall and calm under the rising suns. Finally, the eldest of the Veiri, a silver-haired warrior named Arendor, addressed Lyra directly. You will face him, he said, his voice echoing with authority. The human called Kale must be tested in combat. The ceremony of blades will decide whether he is a friend or a threat. You, Lyra, will be his opponent. Lyra's heart skipped. She had trained for the trials of valor, yes, but never for a duel against a human. Her mind raced. She had raised her sword against Kale once before and seen his calm smile. Could she strike him again? Should she? Arendor's gaze was steady. Do not hesitate. Your clan depends on your skill and courage. Lyra nodded, though doubt filled her chest. She glanced at Kale, who gave her a small nod in return, as if saying, I will not harm you unnecessarily. The training grounds were cleared, leaving a circle of sand as the arena. Clan members formed a ring around it, their eyes filled with curiosity and apprehension. Kale stepped into the circle, unarmed, calm, and patient. Lyra drew her sword, its blade glinting in the sunlight. She felt the weight in her hands, the power in its steel, but also a strange sense of restraint. Begin, Arendor commanded. Lyra advanced cautiously, circling Kale. Every instinct screamed to strike, to test him, to see if he was truly human, truly vulnerable. But Kale did not move aggressively. He simply watched, his eyes following her every step. Lyra lunged, her sword slicing through the air. Kale stepped to the side effortlessly, letting her momentum carry her past him. She spun, attempting a second strike, faster, sharper, but again he moved with ease, never blocking, never dodging in fear. Why don't you fight?" she demanded, frustration creeping into her voice. "I do not need to fight to understand," Kale said calmly. "I observe your skill. I learn your ways." Lyra froze mid-strike. His words confused her. Fighting was not only survival, it was honor. It was strength. And yet here was someone who stood before her, smiling, unarmed, showing her that power could exist without aggression. She attacked again, harder, faster, testing the limits of her strength and Kale's calm. Every strike met patience, every swing met understanding. Lyra's arms ached. Her breath came in short bursts, and yet she felt no fear. Instead, she felt a strange admiration growing inside her. The crowd watched in silence, unsure whether to cheer, gasp, or remain still. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but what they had not seen before was a human who did not need to dominate to be respected. "Your movements are precise," Kale said softly as Lyra spun for another strike. "But your anger clouds your mind. Calm brings clarity. Strength without calm is wasted energy." Lyra stopped mid-strike, her blade hovering inches from his chest. Her violet eyes widened. No one had ever spoken to her like this during combat. She had trained her whole life to anticipate, to dominate, to prove herself. And yet Kale's calm presence, his understanding, and his words pierced through all that she had believed about strength. She lowered her sword slightly. I don't understand," she admitted. "You will," Kale said gently. "Not through force, but through patience, observation, and heart. You have strength, skill, and courage, but wisdom will make you unstoppable." Lyra's mind whirled. Could strength exist without anger? Could courage exist without challenge? She had always thought that a warrior's purpose was to strike and conquer. Yet now she saw something different. A power that came from understanding, from seeing the bigger picture, from knowing when not to strike. The duel continued, but it was no longer a contest of strength. Instead, it became a lesson. Kale guided her with words, subtle shifts in his stance, and gentle encouragement. He never touched her, never dominated her movements, yet she learned more from him in minutes than she had in years of training alone. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Lyra's arms shook, her sword arm tired, yet her mind felt sharper than ever. Finally, she took a deep breath and lowered her sword fully, stepping back. The crowd gasped. She had yielded mid-duel, something unheard of in the Veyari clan. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Elders frowned, some in disbelief, some in curiosity. Kale bowed slightly, acknowledging her skill and her choice. "You understand now," he said softly. "Strength is not only in the blade. It is in the heart and mind as well." Lyra's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her heart pounded, not from fear but from the excitement of discovery. She had faced what she thought was an enemy and learned a truth far greater than any duel could teach. Arendor stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "You have surprised us all, Lyra," he said. "To lower your sword in the face of a human? It takes courage that few possess. Perhaps wisdom is indeed a form of strength." Lyra looked at Kale, who smiled gently as if encouraging her to trust in her own judgment. In that moment she felt her world shift. Humans were not merely threats. They could be teachers, allies, guides, if one could see past fear and preconceptions. But even as understanding grew, tension remained. The elders' whispers revealed doubt. Not all humans could be trusted, not all humans would act as Kale had. And in the shadows of the dunes a few figures watched closely, their eyes narrowed with suspicion and a hint of anger. Lyra sensed it before Kale did. Danger lingered on the horizon, not from Kale but from those who feared change. She clenched her sword once more, not to attack Kale but to prepare herself. Lessons could be learned, alliances formed, but vigilance was still necessary. Kale noticed the shift in her demeanor. "Do not fear what is ahead," he said. "We face challenges together, not as enemies. Trust in your strength, your courage, and your heart, and trust in those who show patience and respect." Lyra nodded, understanding that her journey had only begun. The duel had ended, yes, but a larger battle waited, one not of swords alone, but of trust, diplomacy, and wisdom. She had glimpsed a future she had never imagined, a future where humans and aliens could fight together, side by side rather than against each other. The suns climbed higher, burning away the early morning chill. Lyra sheathed her sword, her mind alive with questions and possibilities. Kale walked beside her, silent and calm, a quiet reassurance that strength could exist without domination, that courage could be measured in choices, not only in combat. The Veyari elders discussed in hushed tones, some nodding slowly, others frowning in thought, and all around them, young aliens whispered to each other, curious, inspired, and eager to see what this human could teach their world. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had faced her first true challenge against Kale, and though it had been unlike any duel she had known, it had opened her eyes to a path far greater than honor alone. It was a path of understanding, patience, and the courage to see beyond fear. As she looked toward the horizon, where sand met sky, she realized one truth above all. Her fate was changing. The duel with Kale had shown her that strength was not just in the sword, it was in the heart, the mind, and the choices one made. And for the first time, Lyra felt ready to embrace that change. The desert wind swept across the dunes once more, carrying whispers of challenges yet to come, of alliances yet to be formed, and of lessons that would shape not just Lyra, but the future of Scythera itself. And through it all, Kale walked beside her, smiling, patient and calm. The man who had changed her fate with nothing more than his understanding and his unwavering presence. Lyra raised her head high. The journey ahead would be difficult, yes, but now she understood that courage and wisdom, not anger or fear, would guide her. And in that understanding she found hope. The rising storm had passed, but the winds of change were only beginning to sweep across Scythera. The desert of Scythera was quiet that morning, but Lyra felt an unease she could not shake. Though the duel with Kale had ended peacefully, whispers among the elders hinted at danger. Not all of her clan had embraced the idea of humans as allies. Some viewed Kale's calm strength with suspicion, others feared change and the unknown. Lyra trained at the edge of the dunes, her sword slicing through the air as she moved with precision. Kale watched silently, standing a few steps behind her. Though he had not drawn a weapon, his presence alone inspired confidence. He had taught her more about patience and strategy in the past 2 days than she had learned in years of training. "You are improving quickly," Kale said, his voice calm. "Your strikes are sharper, your focus stronger. But remember, vigilance is as important as skill. Not all threats are obvious." Lyra nodded, lowering her sword. "I feel it," she admitted. "There is something hidden, a danger we have not seen." Kale studied her carefully. "Trust your instincts, Lyra, they will guide you. But do not act rashly. Observation first, then action." Lyra's violet eyes scanned the dunes. The wind shifted, carrying faint sounds of movement from afar. She stiffened. Something or someone was approaching. Suddenly, a group of figures appeared on the horizon, moving swiftly and silently. Lyra's heart quickened. She recognized the markings on their armor. The Draxari, a faction of alien extremists who opposed any cooperation with humans. They had been a shadowy presence for years, striking clans that dared to challenge their strict isolationist beliefs. "They are here," she whispered. "The Draxari," Kale nodded. "Then we must prepare. But remember, we do not strike without reason. Observation first, then careful action." The Draxari stopped at the edge of the dunes, forming a small encampment. Lyra counted their numbers, 12 warriors armed and ready. Their leader, a tall alien with dark green scales and piercing amber eyes, surveyed the area with a cruel intelligence. Lyra recognized him immediately. Vorak, a cunning and dangerous enemy known for his brutal methods. "We cannot allow them to attack Kale," Lyra said, determination in her voice. "He has shown nothing but respect, and yet they see him as a threat." Kyle's gaze was steady. "Then we defend, but with strategy. Strength without planning is wasted." Lyra nodded, feeling a new confidence. She realized that her duel with Kale had not only taught her patience but also the importance of strategy. She moved closer to Kyle, whispering, "What should we do?" Kale pointed to the dunes. "We take the high ground. They will not expect us to use the terrain against them. We can observe their movements, learn their patterns, and choose the moment to act." Lyra led the way, climbing a small ridge to gain a vantage point. From there, she could see the Draxari clearly. Vorak's eyes scanned the area and he barked orders. Lyra noted their formation, their readiness, and the tension in their posture. "They are strong," she said, "and dangerous. But I understand their patterns. I see where we can intervene," Kale nodded. "Then we wait for the right moment. Patience, Lyra, that is our greatest weapon." Hours passed. The sun climbed high and the desert heat pressed down on them. Lyra remained vigilant, her sword at the ready, her mind alert. Kale did not move, his calm presence grounding her. She realized that strength was not only in action but also in restraint. Finally, Vorak made a mistake. One of his warriors ventured too close to an exposed ridge, unaware of Lyra's position. Lyra signaled to Kale. Together they moved swiftly and silently, their steps precise and coordinated. Lyra's sword cut through the air as she disarmed the Draxari warrior, her movements fluid and controlled. Kale moved beside her, guiding her actions, not taking over. Lyra felt a surge of power, not from dominance but from skill and strategy. Vorak's eyes widened in anger. "You dare challenge me?" he shouted, raising his weapon. Lyra stepped forward, her sword pointed with calm precision. "We do not attack without reason," she said firmly, "but we will defend what is right." Kyle stayed behind her, his presence steady and reassuring. Vorak lunged, but Lyra anticipated his strike. She sidestepped, her blade knocking his weapon aside. The other Draxari hesitated, unsure how to proceed against a human and an alien fighting together with such harmony. Lyra moved with Kale's guidance, using the terrain and her knowledge of the enemy's formation. Each movement was calculated, precise, and powerful. Vorak realized that brute force alone would not win this encounter. He signaled a retreat, his warriors pulling back reluctantly. Lyra lowered her sword, breathing heavily but composed. Kyle remained calm, his eyes scanning the horizon for further threats. "Well done," he said softly. "You defended without hatred. You acted with wisdom and courage. That is true strength." Lyra's heart swelled with pride. She had faced real danger, and she had acted not out of fear or anger but with thought and strategy. For the first time, she felt the full meaning of the lessons Kale had taught her. But the victory was not complete. Vorak's retreat did not mean the threat was gone. Lyra knew that extremists would return, perhaps in greater numbers seeking revenge. She also knew that her clan would be divided. Some would celebrate her bravery, others would resent the human who had changed the outcome. "We must inform the elders," she said. "They need to understand what we face today and why cooperation is important." Kale nodded. "Yes, and you must also teach your people what you have learned. Courage, skill, and wisdom are stronger together than fear and division." Lyra descended from the ridge, her sword sheathed but her mind alert. She walked toward the council tent, Kale by her side. The elders awaited them, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, pride, and concern. Arendor stepped forward. "Report what you have seen," he commanded. Lyra recounted the events, describing the Draxari's movements, Vorak's tactics, and the small victory they had achieved through strategy, rather than force alone. She spoke of Kale's guidance not as a master but as a teacher who had shown her a new way to fight, not just with strength but with understanding. Some elders murmured in approval, others frowned. One elder, a stern woman named Sivara, spoke sharply. "Humans are unpredictable. You risked too much by trusting him. Next time we may not be so lucky." Lyra met her gaze steadily. "I understand the risk," she said. "But we also risk losing everything if we refuse to learn from those who can teach us." Kyle did not dominate me. He guided me. That guidance saved lives today. That is a lesson worth following. The council fell silent. Arendor studied Lyra closely. "Perhaps you are right," he said finally. "Strength is more than weapons and anger. It is understanding, courage, and the ability to adapt. You have shown wisdom beyond your years." Kyle smiled, a quiet, encouraging smile. Lyra felt her heart lift. She realized that her path was changing. She would not only fight for her clan's honor, but also guide them toward a future where humans and aliens could work together. Not as enemies, but as allies. As the council ended, Lyra walked to the edge of the dunes. Vorak's retreating figures were far away now, but Lyra knew this was only the beginning. The extremists would return, testing her courage, her skill, and her wisdom, and she would be ready. Kyle joined her, standing silently as they watched the desert stretch out before them. "You have grown stronger today," he said. "Not only with your sword, but with your mind. Remember this feeling, Lyra. You can face any challenge if you combine skill, courage, and wisdom. Lyra nodded, her violet eyes shining with determination. I will remember, and I will be ready for whatever comes next. The sun dipped low, painting the sands in shades of gold and crimson. The wind carried a quiet promise. The world of Zithra was changing, and the future depended not on fear or hatred but on courage, understanding, and the willingness to see beyond the familiar. Lyra raised her sword, not as a weapon of anger, but as a symbol of hope and preparedness. She had faced the hidden threat and survived, but she knew the real challenge lay ahead. She would need every lesson Kale had taught her, every ounce of courage she possessed and the wisdom she had begun to understand. Together, human and alien, they would face the trials yet to come, and together they would change the fate of Zithra forever. The desert wind carried a quiet calm, but Lyra knew it was temporary. Since the encounter with the Drixari extremists, tension within her clan had only grown. Some members feared the humans, seeing Kale as a threat to tradition. Others, inspired by Lyra's courage, wanted to embrace his teachings. The elders, caught between caution and change, called a meeting to discuss the future of the Veyari. Lyra and Kale arrived at the council hall, a vast structure built into the side of a cliff. Its walls shimmered with embedded crystals, casting gentle lights across the chamber. Elders sat in a semicircle, their eyes sharp and questioning. Lyra's sword rested at her side, not as a weapon but as a reminder of her journey. Lyra, Arendor began, you have faced the humans and survived, but now you must face your own clan. They are divided. Some follow you, others resist. How will you guide them? Lyra straightened her back, her violet eyes shining with determination. I will speak honestly, she said. I will show them that courage and wisdom together can make us stronger than fear alone. Kale has taught me that strength is not only in the blade, but in understanding and strategy. We can learn from humans without losing our identity. We can grow stronger together. Some elders nodded slowly. Others whispered in disbelief. One Sivara remained stern. We risk everything by trusting outsiders. Your lesson may not apply to all humans. How do you know your judgment is right? Kale stepped forward calmly. I do not ask for blind trust. I ask only for openness. The choice is yours, Veyari. Strength comes from courage, wisdom, and unity. Division brings weakness. Lyra felt a surge of pride. With Kale by her side, she felt a new confidence. One rooted not in fear or anger, but in clarity of purpose. We can defend ourselves and protect our world, she continued. But we can also grow beyond old fears. We can be stronger together. Not just as Veyari, but as part of a larger alliance. The council murmured, their discussion long and tense. After hours of debate, Arendor finally spoke. Lyra speaks with the courage of one who has faced real danger. Perhaps it is time to listen, to adapt and to act with wisdom. Lyra smiled, but the moment of calm did not last. Outside, the wind carried movement. Drexari extremists had returned, more numerous and determined than before. Lyra's heart quickened. The real test was at hand. She drew her sword and ran to the edge of the cliffs, Kale beside her. They could see the Drexari approaching in organized formation. Forak, their leader, led them with a cruel determination, his amber eyes locked on the Veyari Council. They will not stop, Kale said quietly, but we have the advantage of preparation. Strategy, terrain, and unity. Lyra nodded. She called the younger warriors, teaching them the lessons Kale had taught her. Patience, observation, and the careful use of strength. She blended Veyari sword techniques with human tactics, creating a fighting style that was both unpredictable and precise. The battle began with the sound of weapons clashing and sand kicking into the air. Lyra moved with calm precision, her blade striking with strength guided by wisdom. Kale fought alongside her, not dominating but supporting and guiding. Together, they turned the tide of the conflict. Vorac's warriors, confident in brute force, found themselves countered by strategy. Lyra anticipated their moves, directing her allies to positions that gave them advantage. Kale provided insight, using tactics the Veyari had never seen. Vorac's anger grew. This cannot be, he shouted. They are only children and one human. How do they stand against us? Lyra met his gaze, her sword steady. Because we fight with our hearts and our minds, not only our strength, she said. And because we fight together. Finally, Vorac lunged at her directly. Lyra sidestepped, using his momentum to unbalance him. With a swift strike, she disarmed him. leaving him kneeling in the sand. The remaining Drexari, seeing their leader defeated without unnecessary violence, surrendered. The battlefield fell silent. Lyra lowered her sword, breathing heavily but calm. Kale stood beside her, smiling softly. The young warriors looked at her with admiration. The elders approached, some in awe, others in thoughtful consideration. Arendor placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "You have done what few could imagine," he said. "You fought bravely but with wisdom. You have shown the clan the path to unity, not just victory." Lyra realized that her journey had transformed her. She had not only defended her people but inspired them to see beyond fear. Her sword had been raised, yes, but her heart had guided her hand, and it had changed her fate. As the sun set, painting the desert in gold and crimson, Lyra looked toward the horizon. Kale stood beside her, a steady presence. Together they had turned the tide, not just of battle, but of hearts and minds. The turning point had arrived. The Veyari were ready to embrace a new future, one where courage, wisdom, and unity guided their path. And Lyra, the alien girl who once raised her sword in anger, now raised it in hope. The morning sun rose over Zithra, casting soft light across the dunes. The air was calm, filled with the sounds of birds and distant waves of heat shimmering over the sand. The desert seemed peaceful now, but the events of the past days had left an indelible mark. Lyra stood at the edge of the cliffs, her sword sheathed but ready. Around her, young aliens trained, blending traditional Veyari sword techniques with the strategies Kale had taught them. Humans and aliens practiced side by side, their movements synchronized, their energy united. The sight was unlike anything Zithra had seen before. Kale watched from nearby, his calm presence steadying the atmosphere. He smiled at Lyra, who returned it, her violet eyes bright with determination. "It's amazing to see them learning," he said softly. Lyra nodded. "They are learning more than swordplay. They are learning to think, to anticipate, to work together. Strength is no longer only in the individual, but in the unity of many." Arendor approached, his expression warm. "You have done what no one thought possible, Lyra. You have bridged worlds, fought enemies, and inspired a future where humans and aliens can stand together. You are a true leader." Lyra felt pride and humility. Her journey had been long and challenging, but she had grown beyond her expectations. She had learned that courage, wisdom, and compassion were the true measures of strength. Suddenly, a scout ran toward them, breathless. "Lyra, Kale!" "There is a new development. Explorers from another human colony have arrived. They seek guidance and alliance." Lyra's heart leapt. The universe was opening to them, not through conquest but through cooperation. She looked at Kale, who gave a small, encouraging nod. Together they would guide this new generation to a future of unity and understanding. Lyra addressed the young warriors and trainees. "Today is the beginning of something greater," she said. "We have learned that strength is not just in our swords but in our hearts, our minds, and our choices. Together, humans and Veyari can face any challenge and shape a future full of hope." The students cheered, their voices carrying across the dunes. Kale clapped alongside them, his smile calm and reassuring. Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. The desert, once a place of strict survival, had become a land of opportunity, growth, and friendship. In the days that followed, Lyra worked tirelessly to train new warriors and ambassadors. She blended alien combat techniques with human strategies, creating a curriculum that strengthened not just the body, but the mind and spirit. Kale remained her partner, guiding, teaching, and encouraging, never overpowering, always supportive. Vorak and the remnants of the extremists were offered a choice: to continue their hatred or to join the new path. Many chose to learn, inspired by Lyra's courage and Kale's wisdom. Some resisted, but without violence they were isolated, powerless against the unity of the clan. Seasons passed. Zithra flourished. Trade and communication with human colonies expanded. Young aliens and humans trained together, exploring the stars and learning from one another. Lyra, once a young girl eager to prove herself with a sword, had become a symbol of hope and leadership. One evening, as the sun set in twin colors of gold and rose, Lyra stood at the edge of the cliffs once more. Kale joined her, their eyes on the horizon. "You have changed everything," he said quietly, "not through force but through courage, wisdom, and heart." Lyra smiled, her violet eyes reflecting the colors of the sky. "And you showed me that strength can exist without anger, and leadership can come from understanding." Together we have changed our fate and the fate of Zithara. Kyle placed a hand on her shoulder. The journey is not over, but the foundation you have built will guide future generations. You have raised your sword not to harm but to protect and inspire. That is true power. Lyra looked out across the desert, imagining the possibilities. Humans and aliens working together, exploring new worlds, facing challenges with courage, wisdom, and compassion. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The wind swept across the dunes, carrying the promise of adventure, growth, and unity. Lyra raised her sword once more, not in anger or challenge, but as a symbol of hope, courage, and the new dawn she had helped create. The alien girl who once raised her sword had changed her fate, and in doing so she had changed the fate of Zithara and all who would follow. A new dawn had truly arrived.